As a high school student, I wore a feminine pink V-neck and a Cinderella scarf to school one day, and it was all in the name of science. On this particular occasion, I took place in and recorded the observations of a social experiment, which I created and set forth as a part of my Theory of Knowledge class. This class was designed to get students to question and better understand the world at a more philosophical level, and a large portion of this class was to create presentations on various topics, ranging from questions like, to what extent does all knowledge spawn from reason and emotion alone? And to what extent is it accurate to say that we know nothing at all, and so forth. In this particular experiment, I was testing the hypothesis that the consumption of media influences how we view male and female genders. I recorded the comments and looks of my fellow students to use in class for this presentation. The reactions of my peers ranged from uncontrollable laughter, mean looks and stares, and even escalated to the comment by an unnamed peer, "I had no idea pink shirts and Cinderella scarves were the new fad nowadays, Chris." Needless to say, by the end of second period, I had replaced my pink shirt and Cinderella scarf with my normal attire that I had brought to school with me in case of catastrophe. This somewhat embarrassing example gives to show the power that our peers have in influencing our self-image and identity. Although I had clear intentions of wearing that outfit proudly all day, I was incapable of wearing the atypical attire even through half of a day of school. The snickering and laughing was too much for me to handle, and it hit me right where it hurt, in my identity. The definition of identity can be found in the Webster Dictionary and reads, "Identity is the distinguishing character of or personality of an individual." While most people may argue that your identity is a completely personal and on a subjective level, and that only you can determine and control your identity, I would argue strongly against this. As I found out from my experiment, the opinion of others can really have a heavy influence on how you view yourself. I would argue instead that identity is made up of two parts, one part self and one part others, or others' people perspective of you. Both parts play a near equal role in the creation of self-identity. However, there are other large factors at play in our creation of self. Existing high above these two halves of self-identity rests the media, influencing and somewhat controlling both parts of the whole. Advertising, television shows, movies, music, and the newest craze, social media, all have enormously large influences on how we view ourselves and others around us. The grasp of media on our identity is undoubtedly doubled when we consider that media influences both us and those around us, both parts which make up our identity. So first of all, how do I know that identity is made up of two distinct parts? The real argument in holding this position is not whether or not the self has influence on one's identity, as this is obvious, but rather the true area up for debate is the extent of which others can have on one's identity. I've created this model of the two-part identity from personal experiences and from certain testimonials which I've found in doing research. On a personal level, I felt the effects of other people's judgment on me, as every person has. Every person alive has felt the pain when someone makes a harsh judgment or a mean comment about you. It's an innate characteristic to want to relate to other people, and when relationships between humans are harmed by what other people think of you, you can feel the pain as it shakes you down to the core. The effects of judgments can also be seen through the testimonials of people who struggle with low self-esteem and depression, among other ailments, due to the comments or actions of others. I watched a video just this morning of the testimonial of Shane Quakeson, who had been made fun of his entire life. In the video, he walks us through the story of himself and some of his classmates who'd been made the target of other students' judgments. Other children's comments and actions led them to believe that, and I quote, "No one would ever fall in love with us, that we would be lonely forever." This mentality gave them a lifetime of pain, and they are still feeling the consequences to this day. The pain that they feel is due to the fact that these kids began to believe what the other students said about them. Their identities were impacted by those others forever. This fact of life does not have to be a negative one, as in this example, as positive influences too can also impact how you view yourself as well. Continuing on, my argument is not simply that people's identities are affected by the two parts, which again are one part self and one part others. It is that media largely dictates your identity development. Consider this. He who creates what is normal controls the minds of society. After all, how could the aforementioned students, or anyone for that matter, make fun of someone or judge someone if they had no standard of normal or good to go by? This would be fundamentally impossible. So then you may ask, who does control the mind of society? Or who sets the standard for what is normal? My answer to that is the media. The extent to which media is in control of our society is shocking and disturbing. Think about it. Nearly everyone you know in our 21st century society has a cell phone, or access to the internet, or even listens to the radio. I'd be willing to bet that the person sitting next to you in this room right now has a Facebook account. In our modern day and age, technology and media has played the biggest role in defining who we are, and for this, it is the root of our identity development. Media dictates what clothes we buy, how we wear our hair, how we see ourselves physically, what we think is cool or uncool, what type of person we view as appealing, and all sorts of other things. It's human nature to want to be in the club, and by that I mean that no one wants to be excluded from groups or picked on because he's viewed as not normal. The true power of media rests in its unceasing presence in our culture. Media figuratively and literally surrounds us everywhere we go, from the time we're born until the time that we die. Technology and bits of information are literally zooming around us in this very room, and it's been that way ever since we were born. The standards of what is normal to us are set from the time that we are very, very young. From the first encounter with media at less than the age of 1, media's power has already taken hold of us, even at a subconscious level. Take this example. Very young children are largely incapable of learning things on their own, and they instead grow up believing what they are told. Oftentimes they look onto television shows, advertisements, music, or radio to understand what it means to be normal and what it means to be a person. Again, even if this is at a subconscious level. Even if they somehow defeat these seemingly impossible odds and manage to escape the clutches of media, they will learn everything they know from people around them who have been influenced by media since they themselves were less than 1 years of age. The extent of media's power literally does not ever stop. Children and adults are bombarded with the images of ideal beauty, what things you can and can't wear, even what things you should and should not be interested in, from sports to toys to books to movies to cars. The list goes on and on. After years and years of experience with this unceasing media and these concepts that it brings with it, the things that we are taught by the media become normal to us, and we slowly begin to conform to what it dictates. And when the inevitable happens, and someone doesn't fit into one of these groups, or any of these groups, or doesn't look exactly like the man in the swimsuit commercial, he is judged, and the root of judgment and jealousy has been planted, and his or her identity is affected by how other people perceive him or her. The problem with media is that protecting your identity from media in this day and age is impossible. Even if you never watch television, listen to no music, don't have a Facebook or Twitter account, your identity will still be influenced by the people around you who do have a Facebook account and a Twitter, and by your neighbor who records all the Super Bowl advertisements to watch while he makes his morning coffee. Media's societal norms are like a virus. Once one person has learned to accept them, he or she will judge others until they too accept them, and then those people will judge more people until virtually everyone has conformed to their identities to fit the norm. In this day and age, we can no longer determine the patient zero. It's too late for that. Media has been a part of our society for too long to just extinguish its flame completely. And to make matters worse, our society is not at the end of the media tunnel yet. In fact, we're only near the tipping point. Unless we make a change now, our identities will be shaped more and more not by who we are or who we were born to be, but rather by what the media portrays to be desirable. We will lose our free will and become enslaved to the powers of media. M.T. Anderson's novel Feed shows us a perfect example of where society is headed if we don't make a change. In this dystopian society set in the near future, media is directly uploaded constantly into the people's brains. Media becomes so powerful that, and I quote, "It knows everything you want and hope for, sometimes before you even know what those things are." People become so dependent on media in this society that they become literally unable to write with a pencil or to effectively communicate by spoken language. Feed provides us with a cautionary tale of what we may become if we're not careful and if we do not eliminate this problem before it's too late. While media is a good method to connect us to our friends and families, it's not in the least sense guilt-free of negativity. As I've showed you, media sets up social norms, the root of identity development that does not spur from one's own personal self. According to Frederick Buechner, an American theologian, it's impossible to stick to who we truly are, quote, "Otherwise we would run the risk of coming to accept instead the highly edited versions of ourselves which we put forth in hope that the world will find it more acceptable than the real thing." While in an ideal society our identity would only be influenced by who we truly are, who we were born to be, this is an impossible task. Media has let us sip its poison, and our society liked it. Media hides its controlling nature behind gadgets and gizmos, lurking in the shadows of the newest software, and waits until we're hooked on technology before it jumps from the shadows and claims us, one by one, victims of its domination and control. Despite this, it's not too late for our society. We can all be more accepting of each other and less quick to judge. We can all influence television screenwriters, music producers, marketers, etc. behind the media which is thrown upon us by writing letters to companies, legislators, to ban certain negative media strategies and messages. Our society is not destined for the media-dominated world of feed if we simply care more about each other and respect other people's true identities. Thank you.